Hello and welcome. In this tutorial, I will demonstrate the steps you need to take to install and configure the Kogans.net toolchain, development environment, and build system. So let's get started. What you'll need is a shell. So here's my shell. Next is we will create a directory. I usually like to keep these in my home root, simply because if I have multiple users on the same machine, they all can have their own development environment and toolchain built for themselves the way they like it, instead of sharing one. I never like to share anybody else's code. For security reasons, I build everything from scratch, so basically you will need to build and bootstrap the build system as I'm showing it to you now. So we're doing it on OS X. The build system obviously also is designed to run exactly the same way on Windows and on Linux, and there will be other tutorials that will demonstrate those on their respective platforms. This time we're doing an OS X tutorial. So we will create a directory. I like to call these things development, simply because that's just a convention I've used for years. I already have one, so let me rename the one I have so that I can show the steps as they exist from the very as they exist the way you would be doing them as you're following this video. So move development to development, save, make directory development, and change into it. Notice it's nice and empty, just the way we like it. Next thing you need to do is you need to check out my toolchain. And the way you would do that is it's hosted on Git, so obviously you are free to go up and take a look at it without even bringing it down. It's all in source. You're free to audit it and make sure that there's nothing going on, nothing up my sleeve. I highly recommend people do that for themselves just to make sure that everything is kosher. But I will just go ahead and bring that down right now. So it's git clone https github.com. My username on GitHub is ChooChooMan with zeros instead of O's. So that's what you need to do. And the repository is called toolchain. Down it comes, and read it. A new directory called toolchain exists. We can go ahead and take a quick look at it. Again, there will be other videos that will go ahead and explain all the various bits and pieces. Since this is a how-to video only, I am going to skip all of the background and just concentrate on the nuts and bolts of actually getting it done. If you want to know the logic, the theory, all the background material behind what is going on, why it's being done the way it is being done, I highly recommend that you take a look at some of my other tutorial videos. So moving right along, we move into common bin, which is where the script that we need to use exists, and that script is called makebuildsystemdrop.git. Now you'll notice there's another script right next to it called makebuildsystemdrop.svn. I used to be and still am very much a Subversion user and lover, and so I maintain my development environment for both environments. I know that Git is the latest and greatest, the hottest thing, and everybody loves it. But like I said, being old school, I grew up with Subversion, even CVS before that. I still love it, and I'm sure there are others that do as well. And so I provide ways to house the build system and the environment on both platforms and in both repositories. But this time we'll be using the Git version, simply because it's set up and it's ready to go, and that's what most people will be using. So we'll say make build system git, and it needs a bunch of parameters. So I will type them out first, and then I'll explain what they are. So the first one So what is this? Um, Very similar to the way auto tools work. The development environment and the build system rely on something called the environment triplet. Unlike auto tools, though, my environment triplet is the operating system on top of which I'm running, the architecture on top of which I'm running, and the compiler toolchain that I'm using. Those are the basically the rock bottom three pieces of information that you need in order to configure the build system for any particular environment. Unlike auto tools, I don't provide any scripts whatsoever. I don't provide any way whatsoever of guessing at what you have. The reasons for that are varied again because this is a tutorial rather than um, just kind of background stuff. I'm not going to go into why I chose to do it that way here. I will again at a later video, but that's just the way it is, and you need to basically type these things to configure the build environment for OS X. For Windows and for Linux, you'll use different values, but they're the same exact triplet that you will need in order to set it up. And so after hitting enter, you'll notice we are grabbing two repositories off of GitHub. Again, first one is called toolchain, again, simply because when you're bootstrapping a toolchain, I do not rely on what is currently installed on the user's machine. I grab everything nice and fresh from the repository and build everything from scratch. The second repository that is downloaded is one called build system. Now, the build system contains nothing more than the tarballs in a nicely packaged way in order to bootstrap the build system itself. Again, please visit GitHub, Choo Man, and peruse through my repositories, see what I have, check them out for yourself, and make sure that they meet your requirements. So the script is finished, it has done its job, and the artifact that it has produced, it has put into the drops directory. Here it is. It's the Kogan's Toolchain version 13, minor version. I obviously got a long way to go to become a major version, but that's neither here nor there. So that's the bootstrapping part of getting just the tarball configured and ready to be built on your particular environment and on your particular system. Next thing we need to do is to actually build the build system. So I'll take you through the steps required to do that. You first untar the tarball. You'll notice it creates a directory called toolchain. You move into toolchain, and there is a script in there called bootstrap. Bootstrap is the script that is used to bootstrap the whole kit and caboodle. And it, just like the make build system drop script that we used before, it requires those same parameters to be set again. But unlike that script, this particular one, if you tell it to default those parameters, it will save them, so you will never ever have to type them again. From there on, the build system will use the defaults that you have created in order to find the tool chain and all the tools it needs in order to build your code. So let's go ahead and bootstrap the building of the build system at this particular point. Again, OS is OS X. Architecture is x86-64 on OS X. That's the only one that currently exists, as they no longer support i386. But that, again, neither here nor there. The compiler is CLang. On OS X, I currently support only CLang. There are plans for supporting GCC as well, but for now, CLang is the only option. But you still need to supply it simply because I don't guess at anything. You really need to give me explicitly the choices that you need in order for me to do the job that I need to do. And that is about it. Unlike the GitHub the Git URL that we provided to the previous script, this one doesn't need it because everything it needs is already here, and there's nothing it needs to go up to GitHub for to get. So here we will bootstrap this thing and keep it going and let it go. So this step is where it actually unpacks, configures, builds, and links everything and installs everything. This step takes approximately, depending on your system, mine is a 2013 MacBook Pro that I'm running on top of. It's fairly, I mean, it's 5 years old, but it's fairly recent. It's a quad-core i7 processor, so it's not bad. And on my system, it takes approximately 5 to 7 minutes or so to bootstrap and build everything. Your mileage will vary simply because, again, compilation is very much hardware dependent. The speed of the CPU, the amount of memory you have, how much swapping it will need to do, blah blah blah. All these things will play into how long this particular step takes. But by and large, it's completely turnkey and automatic. There's absolutely nothing for you to do other than just to kind of sit and stare at the screen and wait for it to finish. You can go maybe grab a bite to eat or restroom break or whatever it is that you need during this process. It needs no intervention. It literally just goes about its business until it's done or there's an error. And if there is an error, obviously I'd love to hear about it. I've tested this on, oh, I don't know, maybe 150 different hosts running different versions of the OS, doing all kinds of different things. And I hope that I've gotten everything right, but this is software. There are no guarantees. And like I said, if you do uncover a bug on your particular environment, I would very, very much love to hear about it. So now we just wait. I mean, there's like I said, literally nothing to do. One thing I am noticing as I'm staring at the screen is that I am using a video capture software to create this video, and my laptop's fans are going wild right now. Meaning, between it and the various threads that the make is using to build this thing, there is a lot of demand being placed on this machine right now, and as a result, I'm noticing the compilation is going significantly slower than it usually does. In that regard, what you might notice right now is that the build process taking significantly longer than the 5 to 7 minutes that I promised originally that it would take to build. Um, but again, it should be completely turnkey. It's building OpenSSL now. That usually takes on its own usually takes 2 or 3 minutes to build. So yeah, and I am noticing just the progress is significantly slower. Um, your speed should be significantly faster simply because you're not going to be running the screen capture software as I am doing right now just to create this tutorial. But bear with me, and this thing should be finished eventually. By the way, I am going to let this finish till the very end, and I'm going to also afterwards talk about one final step that you will need to do in order to configure your environment, and that is basically just adding a path to your bash profile script. But if you don't want to sit through just mindless compilation scrolling by on your screen, that's basically it for bootstrapping the Kogan's development environment and build system. You can pretty much end it here, or if you got nothing else to do, by all means, stick around and watch it finish till the end. You notice it is building OpenSSL for the second time. There's a reason for that. The first time it built static libraries needed by the OpenSSL command line program itself, and the second time is for building the actual program. So that's why you're seeing it being built twice. By the way, the reason for that is environment contamination. I like to make sure that there are no artifacts left over that I am unwittingly using or relying upon that you might not have. And so, therefore, I decided to take the extra step of doing the second clean build from the start just to make sure that everything is built properly from the development environment and from the sandbox that I've built for it, and not from the system environment like user include or user lib or user shared or wherever else system libraries get installed into. I don't try to never use those things. I never know where they came from. I never know who built them. As a security conscious engineer, I try to build everything from sources that I have vetted myself and made sure they're compliant to industry standards and so on and so forth. And pretty much this is why it's being done this way. All right, OpenSSL is done. It's now building curl lib, and then it will build curl command line tool after that. And then after that, I believe the very last thing is to build the actual build system, which is called the Kogan's underbar make. And that should be it. So probably have maybe another 3 minutes or so, depending on how long this takes. Again, this is curl being unpacked, configured again to build a command line tool. Just like with OpenSSL, I try to keep environments not dependent on any artifacts that were done by previous steps. Trying to do everything clean, step by step, to make sure there are no dependencies, no cross dependencies of any kind. is done, and the very last thing is to build the Kogan's make. And that's it. Notice the last line says default, the Kogans.net build system environment is that canonical triplet that I talked about before. The OS is OS X, the architecture is x86-64, and the compiler toolchain is C-line. That hierarchical in parentheses that you see, that's the naming convention used by the build system. I support two. One is called flat, the other one is called hierarchical. Since we did not provide a naming convention, one is chosen by default, and hierarchical defaults to the naming convention. Again, that's something that will be discussed at another video. The only thing I want to do now is just one more step, show you what you might want to do after you've done this bootstrapping step, is to add a command line, add a path to your path variable so that you can get to the build system commands, which happen to be in toolchain common bin. All of the build system commands are here, and unless you're masochistic and you like to type long paths all the time, you want to actually put this directory in your path and be done with it. So we will Emacs into bash profile, which is, you notice that one is already set up, so I don't have to do it, but I wanted to show you anyway. This is the path that you would add to your bash profile, or whatever it is that you happen to have put the development environment. Like I said, I like to keep mine in my home directory, and the directory is called development, but you can call yours whatever you want, and whatever it is you called it, I would go ahead and let's say here, development, toolchain common bin, and I would say print working directory, and I would grab that, copy it, and put it into my bash profile to make my life a lot easier. And that is it for this tutorial. Thank you very much for stopping by. Thank you very much for watching all the way through. Much appreciated, and I hope you enjoy the video and enjoy my code. If you have any questions, any issues, comments, anything you want to say, ask me, problems to report, put it in the comments of the video, or excuse me, ask it as a question on GitHub. Thank you very much, and take care until next time.